how do you make decisions when you've got lots of different ideas in an area?
I think one of the things is who has the loudest voices, and I mean you've illustrated that potentially in your area as well. And so one of the tensions is, do you listen to the loudest voices because they are, for whatever reason, perceived as more powerful, or they just have more influence, whatever, or is part of your responsibility to surface some of the quieter voices who are perhaps not as well connected or as empowered or whatever, but their need is more, is kind of deeper. So that, I think, is a tension that probably every project in the history of time has had.
And sometimes the loudest voices are the most hard-working ones as well, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So the people who are putting all the time in and trying to make it work have the loudest voice because they're right at the centre. Mm-hmm. So they are helping make Big Local work. If it wasn't for them, it wouldn't be there to some extent.
Quite often people are speaking through them as well. You know, if they're not too confident at speaking in public or joining in and participating, they'll speak through that character in the community that they know and trust to get their voice heard, rather than coming to the forefront and speaking for themselves. So quite often they do come representing, you know, a large part of the community as well.
If you're going to get young people on board, it will prove to the council that, look, this is what the kids want, and you need to get the opinion of the young people up. Because, you know, the young people, it's where they're like, when they get older, they want to see a park. Because obviously, as you can see there, there's nothing from there about their kids and their kids. They want, the young people are wanting a park and they're wanting this, but they need to have their voice heard. They need to be listening to people and not just get thrown away.
Long before Big Local came to our area in Hasland, we created the Friends of the Park, Eastwood Park, which is in the centre of the village. And one of the first things we did was went to the local youth club, because the park then was just a green space, very little in it. And small, broken, poor equipment. And I went to the local youth club and spoke with the then teenagers. They're all children now, their own, of course. It's 2006 I'm talking. And I said, okay, what's the wish list? I still got the 2 pieces of flip chart paper, I still got those. And there was a swimming pool, of course, and all the rest of it. But skate park, we would call them wheels parks now, but skate park. Now, we are almost at the point of delivering that 10 years down the road. And year on year, the local community school have a Year 7 off-curriculum programme for the one week of the summer term. And they take the young people, the 11, 12-year-olds as they are, round the village looking at the offer. It's good, it's bad. If it's not good, what would you like to have, And year on year, they come back with the offer for the park, even though it's brilliant now compared to what it was, there's been a lot of money spent on it, we still haven't got the skate park. We're going to get it. We're going to get it quite soon, hopefully, but we haven't got it yet. But it has been a 10-year progress. And we still have got, the public meeting we had about 6 months ago now, which was the last one to get to this point, we had about 4 very loud voices in a very busy hall shouting against it, literally shouting against it, weren't they? Shouting against it, telling me I know nothing, which is probably quite true. And the other people in the room, which included some young people who come with their ideas for improving the park, around the skate park project, wanting it. So we had probably about 80 people in the meeting, 100 or more, 4 shouting against and 96 wanting it. Now, I'm not saying that the don't wants shouldn't be listened to as well, but their objections had to be understood, commented upon, and dealt with. Otherwise, they were just going to continue to be cross.
Quite often, if they're in a setting like that, you can often win over the ones that are against it on that 10-year journey, hopefully on a shorter journey for you. But you can quite often, with that ongoing consultation and dialogue with them, win over them, and they gradually come over to see the benefits of that, and then you've got a more even balance.
When we did this, when we talked about doing LPAC, right, I mean, Facebook was lit up. You know, they're all scum, they'll destroy it, it's not worth having, right? You know, the kids up there are absolutely animals, you know what I mean? And that was the comments that was going out there, right? This park's been up, I mean, you'll see it because we're up there, but this park's been up for a year now. And do you know, we made a budget of £5,000. Do you know how much money we spent? 150 quid, right? And that was replacing nuts and bolts, right? The biggest, what we did was labour for somebody to come and actually do it. You know what I mean? The kids love it, right? It's right near a school, and the kids who are going to school, they aren't on the way to school. The mums, because we're often there, because we meet right next to it, they'll say to us, you know, I used to pick my kid up at 12 o'clock and I used to go home for dinner. Now they're on the park for an hour, right? They won't go till they've had the play, you know what I mean? And there's areas where you can sit and have a picnic, and in summer days, families go out, they sit there on these benches and have picnics, you know what I mean? It's a centre for the estate. We're just talking, we're just going through a thing with a lady who's trying to raise some money for her children who are going to Cambodia. Right, she needs to raise £8,000. She's asked, because there's like a village green there, can I use that to do a car boat and use that money to get my kids to Cambodia? We said, yeah, we think that's a really good idea. The people who were shouting are now visiting it and saying it's absolutely fantastic, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
This is the best thing what's ever happened on this estate for many years. In there's a positive message, it's not it's not the journey, it's who you meet on the way, you know what I mean? And that installs in kids, you know, the feeling. And these kids who would normally sit in their own house, right, playing on iPads and whatever, and now falling out in a park, and that sounds awful, but kids have got to learn to deal with falling out with each other. You know, it really is an important thing.
If you think about how much money's been pulled out of local areas and how much is coming back through the actual cash that you get from big up, it's tiny by comparison. So you've got to follow the energy, because that's where your resources is, people's time and effort and all that kind of stuff. You've got to generate people's belief that if they say something and put their hand up for something, that something will happen. And if you don't, of course you're going to just sit back and go, it's pointless.
We're like the rest of you have been through all the Objective 2 things, and you get the forms and you fill them in and you send them back and nothing happens, and then you get another one, you fill them in, send them back, nothing happens. And to be fair, when we sat down, the biggest driver to this was the lass called Kerry. Gob of a stormtrooper, you know what I mean, her mother of 6, and she said, my kids need a park, right? And that's one of the things on here what says that the kids want a park. Right, and I live here 2 doors up from this park, right, and my kids can't play on it. The nearest park is too far for my 5-year-old to go, right? Why can't we have a park here? And she was very strong, and she was a great supporter in this, you know what I mean? And to be honest, as I say, we had to go through all the bad press, we had to go through all the bad things, but we had some good partners on there. Groundworks, which were really good with us. Scarborough Council, who bought in very early, we got 50 grand off them, which was really good. To be honest, it was a massive risk. Right, we were the biggest expenditure. We were, you know, nearly £400,000 going down here. Right, if we didn't deliver, I mean, Big Local was going to have a massive egg on its face. You know what I mean? It's a great process what the Big Local use, because you've got a plan, right? And if you don't believe in that plan, right, then how can you go forward? You know, you've got the next generation coming up who can't, right, have a voice at the moment, but they have a need, and that need should be met.
Can I ask, I mean, it's going back a bit to the wants and needs thing, because a couple of the areas I'm working in, there's quite a tension between young people and adults, because young people want to play in the park. They might want the park improving a bit, but they want unsupervised play in the park. You talk to the adults, and what young people need is supervised play. And there's kind of two very different takes on what young people want, need one.
I think for us, the idea was, I mean, you looked at the groups who were in that park, you had a lot of mothers there, you know what I mean, who normally the children play in isolation in their own garden. They don't let them on the street because of traffic. So you get a park like that where you can sit down, right? I mean, honestly, the first day we opened, family came, they had a bag and put it down, sat at the table, and they actually started taking food out. They were going to stay there, right, all day. It was a fantastic day. We adapted some of the play equipment for disabled use. You know what I mean? Some of the tables have a part missing, so you get a chair underneath. You know what I mean? And it was all thought of. I mean, the group who did it. You know what I mean? And Kerry will tell you. I mean,
You've had your own issues.
Yeah, massive.
With somebody next to the park who didn't want the park.
That is one of the things that people need, is to learn to get along together.
Yes.
You know, we all need that. And
Staying actually in the conversation as well, and
Yes.
not saying, you know what, I'm off. Because that doesn't help anything.
Well, that's
Or
what
I
that
don't
bloke did.
care.
Yeah.
Right, he came to meet him one night, told Roy that Roy was a total this, and then stormed off, and he's never been back. He's not joining the conversation no more, which means that, you know, his will now is being taken away. His voice is gone.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Which was a shame.
You took a huge risk, and that's 40% of your budget within the first 18 months, 2 years of...
It was 3 years.
3 years. Tell us a bit about, because quite a lot of the the areas I'm working with are incredibly risk averse.
The problem is, right, is it's belief. You know, honestly, it is down to belief, right? I mean, in the park, it's not who you meet. It's not the journey, it's who you meet on the way, right? And we really believe that, you know what I mean? It's a big local group, right? I mean, we have a Monday morning club, which we think is a really good way to deal with things. And we get people in and they talk about different things, what they can deliver and all that sort of thing. Being risk averse, yeah, we could have sat in our hands for 2 years. We could have sat there and then lost all the interest of all of our big local, right? Because they would have done, they would have all just split it away, right? And we thought, yeah, a park, massive risk, you know, 40% of our budget, right? If we do this and it's wrong, all of us are grass, you know what I mean? And they're lawnmower, they're going to eat us, right? So if we are going to do it, right, we've got to do it right. And when you start doing a park, right, if you're changing things like we did, because I mean from the original park, I mean there's no resemblance to where we are now. You hit things like planning with floods, with water coming from the park. As it's an existing park, there's no legislation to cover it. Once you start changing it, you can't have water running from your park onto the public highway. They won't allow it. So it was designing it so the water went into the park. There was all that going on. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Roy was down every day, right, talking to the contractors, talking to the people who were delivering it. We had a meeting 3-4 times a week. You know what I mean?
No, it's about the
delivery.
community.
You
And
know
I
what I
just
mean?
come back on that one actually, because certainly our project, I was just going to ask that, we were the third wave, we were the last, one of the last 50, but obviously you're one of the first 50, or second?
Where to?
You're wave 2. Yeah, and when we started, our plan was driven entirely by the work that had been done to get all the information in, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure all those are the same. And the plan had a very open agenda, because although there were ideas that were thrown out, the delivery of those was a little bit, we were worried. And as James has pointed out, we come from 2 different councils. We've got North East Derbyshire and also the complication of the parish council. And then we've also got our own Chesterfield Borough Council, which is ward-based. And never the train should ever have the conversation. It's just ridiculous. No, it's just unbelievable. Anyway, so we're quite careful and cautious. So our first year was very tentative, I have to say, very tentative indeed. Apart from, I think we're probably going to show the Green Open Spaces team, apart from them, they really have gone for it. But that's a different sort of level, if you like. But as year 2 was approaching, we started to get the rumblings, and people said, you know what we've got to show for it, what's happened so far, we've handed out 500 quid here and 200 quid there, what's going off with this money? And you're starting to lose people's interest. And we've had the staffing things. So we've now gripped it to some extent and said, you know what? And so our local plan, which is now being slightly being reviewed and will be resubmitted again in about 2 weeks' time, we've now taken a whole chunk forwards, and we're going to start talking serious numbers for projects, because we want to do those projects and we want to deliver so we enjoy them. You know, we old people, we want to enjoy them too, as well as make sure they're there for the younger ones coming up behind. So we're becoming much less risk averse. We're trying to.
And I think that's why we did it, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because of the past programmes that we've had, the EU programmes,
Yeah.
which just kind of
Was
dipped in
rubbish.
and
Just
out, and
had a
people
pause.
lost confidence and said, oh, it'll never happen, or you can't do that with this money. And people have been asking for a park throughout all those programmes.
Yes.
The money wasn't there for a park then, but everyone said, well, yeah, let's go ahead with it then. It's a massive risk, but it's really put Big Local on the map. People now believe in Big Local.
Yes.
But I'm not saying all those people that wanted a park, got involved, are still involved. They've seen their bit through. They've moved on now. They're
Yes.
enjoying the park. New people are coming on board.
And that's what's so
But
important.
if you go onto the estate and ask, what does Big Local mean? People will say, oh, the park.
The park,
We've
they've
done
done that
this.
so
Do
correctly.
other areas have people who aren't directly involved in the decision-making process on the partnership contributing in a big way? And like
That's
that?
good.
You doing Whitley
Yeah,
there?
yeah, we do. I mean, when you were talking about Peter, I was thinking we have somebody called Nick, who is very not dissimilar in terms of the way he is. His background is he's a landscape architect. He got really involved at the beginning in terms of developing a master plan for the area. But his history is he grew up with a father who did all the parks and gardens in the area, so he's kind of like it's in his DNA. He did this amazing, effectively for free, really detailed master plan for us, which really got people to sort of go, wow, could it really look like that? And we're going, well, it could, but we haven't got the money to make it look like that, you know, but that is, it could look like, get a bit of ambition, And then he now is contributing constantly he comes to the statutory partners meeting we have every month, where we get all our various sort of the council and the police and the various people together and have one conversation. He comes to that every time. He is really involved with then all those sort of nudging it forward with the council when you get stuck sometimes with things, the planning areas, all that kind of stuff. He's very good at getting he talks their language.
Exactly.
He knows they have confidence in him because he isn't a numpty who's going to go off and do something that's going to be dangerous, and, all that kind of stuff. And then he's also very hands-on. So when we planted the trees at Whitney Park, which is our sort of a kind of sort of posher version of the park, it's a kind of it's been there for quite a long time, hasn't it? So it's been there for it's quite established. But we wanted to plant some trees there, and Nick got out there and he wasn't just sort of doing the designs, he was digging the holes.
That's Peter.
Yeah, very much leading from the front, but incredibly, again, it reminded me, very unassuming. Not a loud kind of look at me person. In fact, if the camera comes around, he's the opposite.
That's right, that's right.
And yet, in terms of the impact and the difference, he's been, I think, one of the key people. And he's not on the board, he's not on the budget.
Do you think people in Whitley Bay and people in Chesterfield, do they associate what Peter's done and what Nick's done with Big Local, or
we try to brand it, and that's come back to your branding point. We do try to brand it, and Peter's team do wear branded. They've got branded high vis now. They've also got the branded hard hats. We've got and some of the posts have now been branded up with this was supplied by. We are doing that branding. One of the reasons we took on the roundabout, which is the 54 bus route between the two communities, was to actually put some branding out that people begin to recognise it. And at functions now, at the community events now, people are recognising the brand.
In future, well, there's a good point about we still talk to people now in Haslam and Grassmore and say, "What's that? I've never heard of Big Local." Michael, how do you not know? One thing that's been opened this week related, Peter again, is a round walk that goes from Haslam round through Chesterfield, through Grassmore and back again. The plan is, on Peter's massive plan, there will be boards around that walk. Interpretation boards to say where you are and what you can see. Those boards will have Big Local on them, very, very much so, nice and big.
And obviously, the Berricliff Play Park is Big Local, that's very much so. In Whitley Bay, less so. You do quite a lot of things where you don't brand it, don't you?
Yeah, I would have said so. It's kind of it's like Big Local have their own it's an umbrella over the other little brands, I suppose.
So if one of the earliest conversations I had with somebody who was doing a really, really smashing project, and I went and had a conversation with them, and I knew that they needed money. I knew that, and it seemed like a really worthwhile sort of thing. And I had a conversation with him, and he said, exact words were, "Yes, but we don't want our project to come under Big Local."
Yes, we've had that actually.
And I actually said to him, "That's really interesting." I said, we never use that language because that sounds very paternalistic and kind of like,
Big
Brother, whatever. But it's always your project. But what we're talking about is, could we not come alongside it, because you need some resource. This is a resource. So things like publicity, which every project needs to have. We're funding a couple of local women who run a little PR company to do that. So if you need an article writing and somebody can pick the phone up to the local press, they're journalists, that's what they do. You have to pay for that, we just offer you that. We've got a shop in the town centre. If you want to sell your tickets for your event there, or you want to put your posters up in the window, we're not going to, just do it. And somebody else.
Exactly.
And it's very interesting how the nervousness about. And I have to say, I think we played it really carefully at the beginning, the whole banner about the £1 million and all this kind of stuff. We did not go big style on that at all in PR. It wasn't sort of, hooray, Big Local's come to rescue the world at all. In fact, quite the opposite. We're just another player. We're here we're lucky in Whitley Bay. We've got loads of people doing really good stuff. We've got church groups and community groups.
Recognising what's already there.
We're really blessed with lots of, and don't think that somehow it's like we've landed and going to solve the problem in the world, because you can't,
But
and you wouldn't want to.
following that up, that happened to us to some extent because again, what did come up from in our profile, our community profile, was the fact that there was an awful lot of good stuff out there, which a lot of people didn't respect and understand and know about. So that threw that up instantly. So then we were able to include that. So we're not going to go out there and create a senior citizen group here because I've already got a very good one, or 2, or 3, or 4, which only different people knew about. So that was part of that. But interesting enough, one of the things we have had a bit of a sticky time with was the Men in Sheds project. Now, Men in Sheds, yes, it started, it was slow off the ground, it lost momentum, it gained momentum, it became very introspective. It didn't want to be part of, exactly, didn't want to be part of Big Local, but actually wouldn't it be good if they could be insured through Big Local and have that done for them? Thank you very much for £278 or whatever it was, you know. So there's been that very interesting conversation, and they've been found premises now at no cost by people in the Big Local, but it's still their project. So it's been very aware of them.
Does it matter?
No,
I suppose,
no.
whether things are branded or not, and sometimes, I mean, places like Westfield and to some extent Barrowcliff, it's much more obviously it's Big Local, because the housing estates essentially, they don't have lots of other things going on in them. Sometimes you have deliberately not branded things Big Local, even though they've been supported by Big Local. And earlier this week when we were in Ramsey, they've spent a large amount of their million too, and one of their projects is it's a tourism project. Essentially, it's to try and get more footfall into Ramsey to support businesses and shops and all the rest of it. And it's become quite a big project, and they employ a worker. And they produce now a booklet every year on different attractions throughout the year in Ramsey, and lots of events and related to local history and all the rest of it. And they deliberately didn't put Big Local on the booklet. It was a strategic decision not to.
Because I personally think it doesn't matter, in the sense that, and what I mean by that is, in terms of what is the big goal of Big Local, it's about changing the way we do things around here. That's why I think the very first Big Local meeting I went to was about jam jobs, about cinema, and we wanted some money to create a community cinema. So I went with the begging bowl. I heard there was £1 million, I knew nothing about Big Local, went along, good, where's the money? And turned to Dan, who was the colleague that we both know, and said, 5 minutes in the meeting, this has got absolutely nothing to do with money for a cinema. This is about changing the way this community works and functions. And I got really interested in it because of that. The cinema happened, people got connected in with the cinema through all sorts of, community action, people going out and sort of spreading the word and they got funding in through Unlimited and through various other places. But a lot of it was through literally the local community getting behind it and adopting it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And wanting to be part of it. And then, Dan and others have taken that on, and that's now, a really successful business in the community, in the town. But Big Local, didn't have to be sort of in it and kind of on top of it, labelled low good. And I think if it had been in any shape or form, people would have gotten really fed up.
We do an awful lot of work now, right? I mean, we've been doing the CSS card, which is what you need if you're going to go on a site. So we've been working with Job Match, we're starting a partnership with Yorkshire Site Training Services. We get an awful lot of partners come to us now, right? Because our brand's out there. We won, like you, an award earlier in the year from the local press saying that, we're one of the most innovative groups in the town.
Yeah.
It was a really nice piece of glass sat on my sideboard. But now people are coming to us and saying, we want to buy into your brand, which is right, isn't it, Kerry? People come to us and say, we want to be part of that brand. We want to be part of that success. And that's where we are. We're a success, people are buying into. We're putting £35,000 into the local junior school, and they're doing things like forest schools, beach schools. They're doing opportunities for children who wouldn't normally get it, right? And we're supporting that over two years, and we're fading out of year 3. Now, the school's the only one in the area, right, who's doing such things, because they've never had this kind of money available to them, you know what I mean? And it's giving the school a real drive forward. The school's pleased to say they're working with Big Local. I live there, so I'm definitely on board, you know what I mean? I've lived there all my life.
it's not about the community being just used to
No,
replace
absolutely.
all the things that
No.
have happened. That is a different agenda.
Absolutely, entirely.
And you know, you're going to you're just being taken a lend of here.
Yeah, but I think it's the partnership thing is so important. In a much smaller way, on our little estate that we live on, when the developers moved off because they'd finished, they stopped looking after the estate. So the public planchers, which are huge, they get slashed and burned twice a year by the Borough Council. So everything goes, this gets, that's it, job done. So we create our little green team, all old people, turning up when they do, the bit of green space next to them, all by negotiation and arrangement, not done without. We do that when we can, and we get rid of the stuff, and then we pile the bags up, and the council move it away for us. So it's a very much collaborative arrangement.
One of the first things we did was we set up a monthly meeting with our statutory partners, and I think that's been really
Communication.
important.
I'm going to say that.
We're
It's the conversation.
which is very unusual for officers, because officers hated coming to Whitby Bay because they got such an ear bashing, because all that the local folk did was cycle off the council and said, you know, so it wasn't pick me, I want to go out to Whitby Bay if you're an officer. It was all gone, let me please not be a person to go and face all those gobby people out the coast. Now it's a very, very different kind of conversation, and it is down to it's the simple things. It's we come, we go, that was then, this is now.
That's right.
Let's have a cake,
Yeah.
it sounds really cool, let's break bread together, you know, let's do this, and then look, and be very firm about, we're not going to do the stuff that is your job.
Absolutely.
We're not taking that on, and also we're not taking your jobs away either.
We've had
the
that one
other
as
work,
well.
You know, you're doing
the council's
that
jobs.
used to be somebody's job to
Yeah.
do that, and now you're doing that.
Yeah.
No, we're not doing either of those things, but we are a resource. I know I keep going about it, but just meeting every month with the police, the council, and when we say the council, it's people who are dealing with regeneration, who are dealing with marketing, who are dealing with young people. That regular conversation is really important, and you're saying that very similar things to what you're saying. You know, look, we want to be an inclusive, welcoming. Everybody has a right to a decent existence. However, this has to be managed.
What we're interested in is not about one leader, it's about collective leadership across the community. And actually, what Stephen does is allows that to
Empowers.
happen. So that people can play some leading roles, so that it spreads.
The greatest quality of a leader, being able to delegate.
Delegation, that's it, delegate. But also a word I like to use, which I consider myself to be, certainly Barbara and Stephen and Peter, we are enablers. We help other people to do what they want to do. And that's what Peter's done.
But isn't that what big lotteries should be doing? You should be enabling people to
I
do
agree
it.
entirely, yes.
Right, you shouldn't be trying to deliver it yourself. You shouldn't be out there managing it. You should be buying in a service what you think will benefit your area. You should be going out and saying to somebody, what will I get for my money? I don't want a youth worker at £32,000 because it's absolutely a waste of time. You've got statutory duty to do that, right? But I want a youth worker for 8 hours a week, and how much is that going to cost me? Right? Because you don't need the responsibility of a full-time job. But you do need that. Well, you don't need to. He needs to do it, but you don't want him there all the time. You want him there for 4 hours a week or 8 hours a week. You want to evaluate it, right? What you're doing is enabling them to understand the need on the estate, because that's the problem you have. They say everybody's happy, the rose garden's great, right? My flowers don't have any aphids on, right? And the true fact is you've got slug snails and everything eating everything away, but it looks really good on the surface. And they need to come and understand that. If they can identify that, right? Then I think that they're then thinking to themselves, well, actually, we are selling ourselves short here. And the realisation is you've got to say to them, this is what we want, and then they come back and say, well, actually, we need more hours than that. Well, that's really good, because they've already identified the need. You know, we have bought in services, but I wouldn't, you know, for a project where we were, I wouldn't hire a dog warden. I'd buy a dog warden to come in and do some area work, and they do not. But to be honest, it works really well. We're not providing management. People who's going to work with us are providing their own management, and we're paying them to do it.
You're describing this slightly hands-off approach. You know, we'll enable things to happen and then stand back. I mean, I'm coming across areas where people are doing an awful lot because they feel very accountable for the money.
But then that's the risk element again, isn't it?
Yes.
First, we're risk aware. We know what the risks are, and sometimes we'll get it wrong. you know, and we'll get it wrong for the right reasons. We won't get it wrong because we're incapable.
No.
We'll get it wrong
No.
because
You're full
the
of
reasoning was that that was a good idea. It didn't deliver, and we did have a programme where that happened. And we had to be self-evaluate that programme, and we said, actually, that was crap.
Yeah, and build a
You know what I mean?
I think it's about making sure you create a culture where it's okay to fail and
Yeah.
learn, because it's learning. It's
That's
not
it.
failing, it's learning.
And if you just tell people you're not going to do it because you suspect it's going to fail, you're either going to convince them that's the case before, or let them have a go, but not then laugh at them.
No,
That's the other thing, isn't it?
That's about leadership again, isn't it? That's about, and I think, you know, it's fair to say we've got a mixed economy in our big local areas, even within each one.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
so you've got people for whom, I mean, for every, I can't imagine as many people with £1,000 on a personal level is a big lot of money. But in terms of service delivery, which is what we're talking about, for, you know, really it's a relatively small change, isn't it, in you know, in council or whatever language. So getting that kind of balance, so people go, it's okay to take a risk with a bit of money because you're doing it out there. And the awful thing is, we all know that millions of pounds has been spent on things that people were saying they actually aren't.
Millions of pounds just investigating the feasibility of something. And then where we are with the park, it's like, well, let's just invest a bit of time and money into investigating whether or not it is feasible. So this summer doing some trips out to other parks to see what we like about other parks, getting some quotes, approaching some funders. And then you might have to say at the end of the year, it didn't work, we're knocking it on the head, but just let's at least try.
You know, we're all a victim of how our lived experience, how we've been brought up, how the jobs we do, all that kind of stuff.
What kind of percentage do you think of your £1 million will actually finish up being spent on running your project? In total admin, adverts, logoing, staffing,
20%.
premises.
Commissioning.
20%.
Over and above the 5% LTI, I'm not talking about that, that's different. 20% of $1 million.
Doing what, sorry?
It's just actually running the project, actually, meetings,
Hiring a room,
hiring,
Support.
commissioning,
Yeah.
supporting.
not actually
Salaries.
delivering a project like your playground or whatever, but actually staffing, publicity.
I mean,
Some are higher, some will be much higher.
some of the ones I'm working with are probably closer to 45-50%.
I would say now, I'm already talking on time because I've got board meetings, I'm looking at 50-50. I'm looking at 50-50.
But I think you've raised a really interesting point, because some big locals that we're working with agonise about that. You know, because if they're spending X on a worker, that means I'm not benefiting the community, but equally, you know.
You are.
You are, because you've got people there to
Skill,
work.
yeah, but-
You need people to work. You need staff to make it work.
And also
You've
you
got
bring
staff
employment,
complement.
especially at local. But it's interesting because we have got people within the partnership and our advisors outside the partnership who come to the meetings, obviously, who truly think, believe, understand or believe, I don't understand at all, that there should be no cost. And we just said, well, do you know, how on earth does that actually work?
Maybe that's partly, isn't it? Because people can't see what those costs provide unless you explain
Deliver
it to
what they
them.
deliver, yeah. And I think what I would say is to make it more sensible and not more reasonable to hear what I just said, the 50-50 thing, is the 50% that will be spent, and it will be slightly more than 50 anyway, on actual infrastructure, things that will be there for a long time to come, like the new pavilion and the piece, the tank piece, what have you. Those things are being match funded as well.
Yeah.
So actually we are determined to grow our millions in our local plan from day one, determined to grow them into at least 2 million, and in fact one of the projects at the moment is delivering potentially for itself 45 million.
So I think it's a massive learning curve in terms of just getting to know each other.
Yeah.
You know, I think somebody in Whitney Bay said something really, I thought was so profound. She just went, you know, at the end of the day, it's a massive ask for a bunch of people who didn't really know each other terribly well. You know, some of us knew each other a bit, to suddenly come together and build that trust, so
Yes.
that we can all go,
Huge.
I will,
Huge.
you know, and you know, that's for me, a lot of the learning has been about finding out just how special people are in the town, you know, and how much skill there is.
Some
and
talent
how
there is
much-
out there actually,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
how much good stuff there is out there to a town that has frankly done nothing but talk itself down an agency. It's you're getting people to feel that they have personal agency, and I think it is what you're doing in terms of fighting that fight so that somebody eventually goes, let that woman have 200 quid, because then that person gets the experience that a lot of us have had, been blessed in having through responsibilities in our work or whatever, where we've been given a responsibility, we've taken it forward, and somebody's gone, well done you did that, you delivered that,
Yeah,
that's
I think it is
great.
about delivering, which is why I started again with the park.
Exactly.
What they've done, my
Yes.
God, we've been asking for.
When we did our park, you know, right, what we said, the full group sat down and we said the problem is rumours will happen. In 5 years from now, or 10 years when the big local opening, that only happened because Bill Chat did it, right? Yeah. That's not true. So we engaged a company, Scarborough TV News, and we said to them, we want you to film our process of meetings, going through, starting on the park and doing it, and that's on the bigger story there. But it shows it wasn't two people, it was a group of people.
Yeah, it was good.
And that was the importance of it. Because everybody will always say that's John Smith's style, because he built it in 1920. And everybody has these little myths, you know what I mean? Well, with the big local, there isn't a myth, right? Because it's there, it's recorded, everybody knows how it happened, how it works, who was involved. You know what I mean? And the story's there for everybody to see. And that's why I think that when you do videos, and it tells a story, it's a lot more powerful than you sitting in a pub, because send 3 informants, we're going to have a dance, was what was said on the front line.
Yeah.
What they actually wanted was reinforcements because we're going to be revamps. But I think people remember things differently. But when you can see it on a video, you can say, actually that was a really good thing. It was resident led, resident delivered, and everybody had to learn about planning, about legislation, how to negotiate with the council. It's not easy.
What does resident-led mean?
For us, resident-led means that only residents can vote anybody to come onto the committee. Outside bodies can't. We do allow outside bodies to have a full vote, but they cannot vote anybody onto the committee. Only residents can. We've made that specific because of the programme like Objective 2, where what tended to happen was you had a resident involvement, they step back, then they'd fill it with a statutory body, then more step back and more statutory body. This way, the residents are the only people who can vote on the committee, right? And when we speak to people, we always say that anything we deliver primarily must be for the benefit of people in the big local area. And that's a strong thing we tell everybody, isn't it, Kerry, when they come? Right, not solely, but primarily. So, you know, if somebody's out just outside the boundaries, we're not going to stop them. But it's got to be delivered, the greatest number's got to be the big local area.
Well, that's what the article was in The Guardian this week. It was amazing to us. And if you saw it, the Saturday's Guardian did a big article about, you know, coastal towns, and the first one at the top is Whitley Bay. That article wouldn't have been written 3 years ago.
Yeah, the change, the weird change, like CEAD only got involved in big local recently, but to think of what big Whitley Bay was like 3 years ago, the sense of community is 2-3 times the amount. A lot more people know each other, see each other, are doing things together. Again, because our big local brand isn't as big. For me, all I see the brand on is the shop, or maybe the carnival or something like that. But it doesn't matter because there's a foundation growing of community throughout the whole.
Which actually may be more sustainable because it hasn't got that branding when you think
That's
about
what I
it.
think, yeah.
That's one of the dangers of the branding, is that when when we do all fade away, as we shall do, if we're not careful, we haven't built the foundations strong enough to stand alone, then it will be the same as every other regeneration programme, and that's not what we want to be the case
And
at
it's
all.
so like most of our town is so anything. So like there's a Mouth of the Tyne Festival in Whitley Bay, but that's just branded with North Tyneside Council, all that stuff, and it just doesn't seem like it's got that heart of the community about it because it's got the council stuff. For us anyway.
It ticks
for
the
us,
box for them, doesn't it? But it doesn't actually do anything for the community as such.
Yeah, so we have, I think, if you correct me, we have just a load of, like, say, things that have started up that are in an umbrella of just being helped by the big local. But I think in this day and age, people are starting their own stuff nowadays on little budgets with the internet, Facebook pages and stuff. And that's where a lot of big Whitley Bay big locals stuff is encouraging.
But actually, when you're on the ground in these places, it makes perfect sense. You could live in Grasport 20 years and not know there was a community centre there at all.
Yeah.
You really could.
To answer the questions of what would be different, it would be exactly that people would feel that they had permission to take something forward and make something happen, and also they knew where to turn to get the means to help them to do it. And for me, the permission is you don't necessarily have to wait to go through hundreds of pages of red tape and reasons why you can't do it because it's somebody's job to say no. but also that you know enough people around the neighbourhood who you think, well, I could hold the tree while you chop the branches, but I don't feel confident to do it on my own. You know, there's that, a big local has unlocked some of those conversations. It's done its job, I think.